Welcome back to my channel. If you are visiting this space for the first time, you are also highly welcome. Let's look at the innervations of the tongue. The innervations of the tongue are very complex, but are very interesting. The innervations of the tongue, as we said, are very complex. And the reasons behind this complexity is that the different regions of the tongue are innervated by different nerves. And also the general sensory, special sensory, and also motor innervations of the tongue are also different. If you look at the configuration of the tongue using this image here, and if it is divided into the anterior 2/3 in the front and posterior 1/3 behind, the different sub-regions, as it is so created here, are innervated by different nerves. And this, of course, is attributed to developmental anatomy of the tongue. We know that the tongue, for these specific regions onto which this division is created, are developed from different embryonic structures. And this is why they tend to take the nerves from these two structures. And at the end, you see that these two sub-regions are innervated by different nerves. Also, the general sensory innervation of the tongue, also the special sensory innervation of the tongue, and finally, the motor innervation of the tongue, which of course is to exhibit motor functions, are all innervated by different nerves. And this is what actually creates the complexity of the innervations of the tongue. So let's go through this lecture to establish the different nerves that are responsible for exhibiting these specific functions. For general sensory innervation, is supplied by different nerves based on regions. So if we try to divide the tongue, let's say this is the general configuration of the tongue, and we have this demarcation created at this point. We have the anterior 2/3 at the front, and we have the posterior 1/3 behind. These two sub-regions are innervated by different nerves for general sensory innervations. An example of this general sensory innervation could be for the sense of pain, the sense of touch, or even the change in temperature. So for the anterior 2/3 is innervated by the lingual nerve. The lingual nerve is a branch of the mandibular nerve, which of course is the third branch of the trigeminal nerve. Let's try and illustrate it using this image here. This is the trigeminal nerve here, highlighted in blue. And we know that the trigeminal nerve is the fifth cranial nerve, and of course is divided into three major subdivisions. So we have the ophthalmic branch here highlighted in yellow. We have the maxillary branch here highlighted in green. And of course, the final branch, which is the mandibular branch, is highlighted here in red. So from this mandibular branch is where we have the emergence of the lingual nerve that is highlighted here in dotted black. And this lingual nerve is what then supplies the general sensory innervations of the tongue. But specifically, it supplies the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. So going to the posterior 1/3 behind, this is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So let's say this is the glossopharyngeal nerve highlighted in purple, and you see it giving the general sensory innervations of the tongue, specifically to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. So you see that the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 are innervated by different nerves for general sensory innervation. Going further to special sensory innervation, we know that the special sensory innervation of the tongue is for taste. This is what the tongue is designed for the sense of taste. So we also have nerves innervating the tongue to exhibit this specific function. Let's say this is the configuration of the tongue. As we've highlighted in our previous slide, we have this demarcation here, dividing the tongue into the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3. So for special sensory innervation, we also have different nerves innervating the tongue for special sensory innervation for taste. Of course, we said this is what the tongue is designed for. So for the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, it is innervated for special sensory innervation by the chorda tympani branch of the facial nerve. So let's also try to illustrate it around this base. Let's say this is where we have facial nerve here highlighted in blue. So from the facial nerve, we then have the emergence of the chorda tympani branch, which of course supplies the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. So for the posterior 1/3 of the tongue, it is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So behind here, we have the glossopharyngeal nerve, which of course is the ninth cranial nerve. And this is what gives special sensory innervations of the tongue to the posterior 1/3. You can see that the posterior 1/3 for general sensory innervation and special sensory innervations are supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. But the anterior 2/3 for both general and special sensory innervations are different. It's good for us to be able to highlight this. So going to the motor innervation, the motor innervation of the tongue basically allows the tongue to exhibit motor actions, which include coiling of the tongue, rolling of the tongue, or twisting of the tongue. For both the intrinsic and the extrinsic muscles of the tongue are innervated by the hypoglossal nerve, which is the 12th cranial nerve. The intrinsic muscles of the tongue are muscles that forms the bulk of the tongue, while the extrinsic muscles of the tongue are muscles that are seen to connect the tongue to the surrounding structure, because the tongue needs to be held in place and also supported by this structure. So both the intrinsic and the extrinsic muscles of the tongue are innervated by the hypoglossal nerve, but there's an exception to this. The palatoglossus muscle is innervated by the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve. So thanks for watching this video. Let's continue to stay glued to this channel.